Good morning and welcome to Kunzang Pyo Chulin. This morning's teaching by Jetsunma Ahkon Lhamo is entitled The Beginning of Everything. It's one of the more recent teachings that she has given in the longer form, and it's also pretty amazing, so I hope you really enjoy it. We'll begin.
It's really good to see you all again. So, forgive my nervousness. It's been a while, and I hope that you will enjoy the teaching. Tonight we're going to talk about the beginning of everything. All things that are sacred arise from primordial wisdom, from the primordial essence nature, I should say. And from this nature, everything that is sacred pours forth and becomes both bodhicitta and later on wisdom. So this division is not a division at all. It's all one movement. But it all begins with primordial nature. When primordial nature begins to manifest, the first thing that occurs is bodhicitta. And how does bodhicitta occur? It can only happen through sentient beings. Through sentient beings, not from sentient beings. Sentient beings have a lot to learn before they gain the bodhicitta. The bodhicitta is not something that it's natural to us, it's naturally inside of us, but it's not born with us in the sense that we don't naturally accomplish it. We have to try to accomplish it. Which is, yes, we have the seed of that in our nature, but we have to try to accomplish it. And so, bodhicitta remains in our mind stream until such time as we can bring it up, give rise to it. And that, of course, happens through study. Most people make a terrible mistake about the bodhicitta. They think that they were born with it in the sense that it's already developed. And a lot of times people think that's so because they are nice people. And that's not really what bodhicitta is about. The bodhicitta is not manufactured. It's not actually occurring naturally, but it has to be built. So, how does that happen? How does that occur? Most people think that nice is bodhicitta. Nice is not bodhicitta. It's not the same thing. I know some people that consider themselves very, very nice. And they don't realize that other people don't consider them very, very nice because they haven't given rise to the bodhicitta. It's just not there. They have all kinds of different reasons, maybe for practicing Dharma. But the bodhicitta actually is there in seed form, but must be developed. And it must be developed through practice. It doesn't naturally occur in its manifest form, in its great form, by display. It's not like that. It has to be built and drawn out, and you have to work at it. The worst thing is when people think they have the bodhicitta because people like them. or think they have the bodhicitta because some people feel close to them in some way. But that's all very silly. It's not like that at all. Bodhicitta takes time, and we have to cultivate the mind in order to bring up bodhicitta. We don't know how to do it normally, so we have to be taught. These days in Dharma teachings, it's become so bad that we forget why it is that we're doing practice, that we're doing it to benefit sentient beings, which is giving rise to the bodhicitta. And giving rise to the bodhicitta takes work. When we give rise to the bodhicitta, it's through effort. Lots of effort. And you can tell from a person's face and their behavior and their demeanor, that sort of thing. You can tell whether there's bodhicitta happening there. You can't fool it. You can't smile and say, oh, there's lovely bodhicitta. You can't demonstrate yourself in some way in order to bring people into compliance with your view of what bodhicitta really is. Instead, you have to study it and understand it and realize that it's not about the small things, it's about the great things. When we give rise to bodhicitta, it is through, first, remembering that that is our supreme purpose. No matter what other practice we do, no matter what we get used to or become good at, bodhicitta is actually the way to go. It's the first understanding of how Dharma goes. Why do I talk about bodhicitta so much? Because there is no Dharma without it. I've seen many places, even in our lineage, even teachers with very little bodhicitta. And you can tell by their activities with their students. And you can also tell by something called the radiance or the brilliance that those with bodhicitta actually have. There is a radiance in their face. There is beauty of a different sort, but you can't fake it. You may try to, but you never can. When lineages come about, they are born from this primordial nature and begin with bodhicitta. Born from the primordial wisdom nature, in essence, all the essence of the primordial wisdom nature, when it manifests as bodhicitta, and that bodhicitta is included in the lineage. Does that make sense? Good. Don't tell me no. So the primordial nature, the primordial essence that we all are hearing about here, where does it start and where does it end? It is beginningless and endless, and only manifests when we begin to manifest it by effort. The most important thing to remember is that, again, the effort. Now, how do you put the effort in? First of all, you begin to understand the suffering of sentient beings. If we don't understand the suffering of sentient beings, we have no understanding at all and have no business practicing Dharma. We understand our own suffering for sure, but not to understand the suffering of sentient beings is unacceptable in a Dharma practitioner. And to make the suffering of sentient beings less important than our own is not bodhicitta. We have to make ourselves understand and bring to our minds constantly that suffering and constantly have compassion. And it shouldn't be compassion for your own family. Like, for instance, sure you have compassion for your own family, but you shouldn't just have like that, because there are so many more sentient beings than there are family. You love your family, of course, and you want the best for them. And your friends, you want that too. But the bodhicitta is developed for all sentient beings. And that's when you know you've really attained some bodhicitta, is when all sentient beings are very, very important to you. And that all sentient beings are needing of bodhicitta. No sentient being wishes to suffer. No sentient being wishes to be alone or to be without hope or help. No sentient being wants this. And all of us have very little of that. We have some love from friends and some love from good friends and some love from family, but it's not the bodhicitta, it's love. Now, the bodhicitta has love in it. When you love someone close to you, you also have bodhicitta for them. But it's not the same as just loving. Bodhicitta is much more profound and deeper than that. So, the bodhicitta then is beyond essential. When you sit down for a teaching and nobody speaks up about the bodhicitta, it's not going to be a great teaching. It may be a good teaching, it may be a scholarly teaching, it may be a teaching that you understand or enjoy, but if there's no bodhicitta in it, there's nothing. I believe this with my whole heart, and that's why I speak. As I start teaching again, I will continue to speak about bodhicitta somewhat, not all the time. It won't be every class will be based on bodhicitta, but there will always be a leaning into it that makes us remember that we are doing this for sentient beings. Not to dress up in robes, but doing it for sentient beings. This is our gift for sentient beings, is to give rise to the bodhicitta. How many of you in here might not know the word bodhicitta and what it means? Are there any? Okay, good. Thank you for telling me. Bodhicitta, again, arises from primordial wisdom, and it means ultimate, sublime kindness. Not regular kindness, but sublime kindness. Like if somebody drops their purse on the ground and you're kind enough not to pick it up and run with it. That's not the same thing. That's kindness. But bodhicitta is when you do all things for all beings that you possibly can, anyone that you run into. And more than that, it is to do your own practice, because your own practice is what will awaken your bodhicitta. If you forget to practice, then there is no bodhicitta. If you forget to give rise to the bodhicitta naturally, every day, daily, then there is no bodhicitta. It's the greatest kindness. Let's explain it this way. If you were rich enough and capable enough to feed every hungry person on the planet, if you could do that, would that be bodhicitta? No, because it's limited. When those people die, bodhicitta is not possible then because there's nobody to feed. And if you manage to give all that you have to all sentient beings, that's kindness, it's not bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is doing your practice so that it fits for everybody. Bodhicitta, once given rise to, is permanent. Once it is thoroughly given rise to, it is permanent. From life to life, if you give rise to the bodhicitta, then it becomes habitual. Life to life, then it becomes permanent, and you will never be reborn again without bodhicitta. But the only way that happens is by practicing it. We are filled with self-concern and often care very little for others and only for ourselves. Or some for others until, say, the relationship wears out, and then no more. And that's not bodhicitta. So what we have to look to is, what is bodhicitta? It is then something that must be everlasting, something that becomes permanent, something that becomes a given in our lives and every life to come. And if you have bodhicitta in the mind stream and are reborn with bodhicitta in the mind stream, then you have that for always, and that's an accomplishment. That brings you to one of the bhumis, which is one of the stages of development on the way to becoming a Buddha. So, let's see, in that case, what would be the way to give rise to the bodhicitta for all those millions of hungry people on earth? Dedicate your merit to them. So, life after life, as we try to give rise to the bodhicitta and it remains within our mind streams, we move through the bhumis, the stages of development, until we become a high bodhisattva and then a Buddha. We have to be taught how to give rise to the bodhicitta, and we do have to reach out to the knowledge part. But you can get to the bhumis without much academic knowledge at all. There are those who have reached the bhumis through loving concern and just the repetition of Om Mani Padme Hum. And the proof is that they would find in their place where they were staying to repeat Om Mani Padme Hum, when they died, you would find like the hair and the nails, but nothing else. There would be some crazy sign like that to show that this person is now in a bhumi. May not have been a scholar, may have been anything, a bricklayer or something like that. Not that bricklayers are problems, but but where was I going with that? Right, there you go. You don't have to be a scholar. It helps. It helps. As you can see, I don't have much of it, but it really helps. And it does bring you into the bhumis and becoming a bodhisattva and then a Buddha. Faster, actually, much faster than the effort of scholarship and all those kinds of things that have to be done, say, piece by piece by piece and step by step by step, the way we learn up in New York. It's different. And to do just that does not bring us quickly to the higher realms. It's the bodhicitta that does. Now, these are degenerate times, and often bodhicitta isn't even mentioned. And I have a real problem with that. I think it's not kind to the students. It holds them back. They don't understand what they're going for. And yet they do their best. They try. But without the bodhicitta and involvement with the bodhicitta, making it the center of your life, making it the thing you do before coffee, give rise to the bodhicitta. It's everything, really. Everything in practice. Everything in Dharma. And if we forget that, we can become a teacher of scholars. We can become very high in that area, in that sense. But do we actually achieve enlightenment? I'm not so sure. Does every teacher that can teach scholastically attain enlightenment simply by doing that? I'm not so sure. There are so many cases in Tibet of beings that have attained enlightenment through very unusual acts of kindness. Well, like for instance, the Buddha in his last life. He was still a bodhisattva, a great bodhisattva, and he gave his life to a mother tiger so that she could eat him and bring forth milk to her starving kittens. And then he was reborn a Buddha. I imagine that it took him many lifetimes to get that far. And in fact, we're taught that it takes him many lifetimes to go that far. But when we rely on the bodhicitta more than the scholastic parts, it takes a very short time. In Vajrayana, relatively, it takes a very short time. Mahayana is closer. Vajrayana is closer still. And then Buddhahood, or Bodhisattvahood. It's hard to think, isn't it, that all that scholastic stuff won't do you a pittance of good without bodhicitta. There are so many scholars, great scholars, who have put their lives and their efforts into study all the time, so that they can teach others to study all the time. In the meantime, what about the rest of us? Bodhicitta is the most important of all things in Dharma. No matter what anyone tells you, and that's why, as far as I'm concerned, Dharma starts at Mahayana. I know that's not a popular statement, but that is what I know to be true. Mahayana and then Vajrayana. Now, Vajrayana is getting to the point where they hardly mention it anymore, which is a problem. And when I go to New York, if I am asked to teach, I'm going to remind them again, like I did last time. So I hope I get to do that, and I hope we all get to meet in that way, and I hope that we can hear the teachings together. It seems like it's been a long time since I've taught, so I seem to have lost the knack for keeping going. Or it could be old age. That's another thing it could be. Count on that. I'm 65 now. I can't remember anything. So, with bodhicitta and with knowledge are born wisdom. Wisdom includes bodhicitta and knowledge. There is no wisdom without bodhicitta, and there is no wisdom without knowledge, but knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. Just like the other example I gave you. They're not the same thing. Is it a subtle difference? Not really. If you know the difference, it's quite enormous. But if you don't know the difference, it seems very subtle, and why even talk about it? Because there's a big difference between bodhicitta and kindness, and there's a big difference between wisdom and knowledge. So we have to remember like that. How many of you plan to go to New York during the last 2 weeks? Good, that's when I'll be there. If you haven't decided to go yet, decide now. Not too late. So the knowledge is essential also, though. You can't offer teachings to anyone else or give them any blessing that includes knowledge, obviously, without knowledge. So it's not like you don't have to study. It's not like you don't have to do anything. It's not like you don't have to recite mantra. It's not like you don't have to cleanse your channels with different practices. You can still do and do all of that. You must do that. But mainly it's the bodhicitta that gives rise to enlightenment. Many stories of in Tibet of people that are commoners, call them, I guess, commoners, have no education at all, never could get to school or shedra or anything like it. But pause. Huh? Right, many stories of commoners. And they have been known to say have met with a Lhama and gotten a transmission, maybe one transmission, say of Om Mani Padme Hum. And because of faith, Guru Yoga, which is the basis of Guru Yoga, and I will talk about that in the future, believe me. Now where was I going? Oh yeah, they managed to recite some mantra that they are given a transmission of from a teacher, and with faith in that teacher, maybe it's the only teacher they know, but faith in that teacher, then they immediately begin to build up good qualities and depth and deep perception. And the connection between Lama and student, the faith is made by that, by the connection on both sides. And many people have had very little training, no training, just that little bit, but the faith was so strong and they developed such a caring for all sentient beings, which rises up from such a realization of the suffering of sentient beings. It's really good to suffer because it teaches us. It teaches us how others are truly suffering. Really here, we hardly know what suffering means. It's not an emotional thing, and if we suffer a little bit emotionally, it's not the same thing. A little bit of suffering emotionally is not like not eating every day or having a horrible illness of some sort, or the terrible things that have happened recently, like the quake in Nepal and the different tragedies or events that we've heard of, like storms and somebody said something, storms and like floods, drought, affecting large numbers of people. That's real suffering. We don't have any of that. Even California is running out of water. We don't have any of that. We're so fortunate, and yet we cry all the time about how unfortunate we are. And while we're doing that, we can't be loving sentient beings. While we're so afraid of our own suffering and so afraid of what's out there, there's no way. that we can be loving and caring for sentient beings. It's all about us and all about ourselves. Most people don't really care what happens to sentient beings. What does it matter to us? And thinking like that is not Buddhist, and there is no bodhicitta. To think, well, I want to gain experience and knowledge in Buddhism so that I can, stretch and go further. That's not the same thing either. It's a longing to be good at something, sometimes it's to wear robes. But the real reason should be, and always must be, the liberation and salvation of all sentient beings. And that's the bodhicitta. Once we give rise to that, then that's it. But we've forgotten that, and the minute we get away from Dharma for very long, it's gone. We've forgotten it. Maybe next life. So don't forget your Dharma. Don't forget your desire to benefit sentient beings in such a way that they no longer have suffering. That should be the goal. To become good at Dharma, yeah, that's okay. But the goal, why? The goal is to benefit sentient beings, and that's the thing we have to remember. On Twitter, actually, I'm on Twitter, and I teach on Twitter a lot. And I actually have people all over Twitter that consider themselves my students. I've never met them, but I've given them mantra, and I've taught them about bodhicitta, and they've learned. It's the farthest reach I can have. I have like 130-some thousand students, really. Not just people that like Twitter, because they don't talk to me that way. They talk to me about Dharma. And all I talk about really is bodhicitta. So I think there's some benefit to that. Since I'm not a scholar, I have no other choice. I was discovered when I was pretty old, actually, and so there was no time to study. I had to hit the ground running. But I know what I know from every other life. And I haven't forgotten in any life. Not since the first time I was realized, or the first time I was recognized, not in any of those times did I ever forget the bodhicitta, ever. And that's because I practice it so much. That can happen to you too. If you really practice the bodhicitta, not in a way to make yourselves look good, but in a way that you actually are benefiting beings. Is it benefiting beings to teach scholarly teachings? Of course. Of course. But without bodhicitta, it's nothing. So, again, bodhicitta is the great sublime kindness. But not just kindness, it is sublime. Without bodhicitta, there is no enlightenment. So you can be a teacher without being enlightened. Did you know that? Yep, I've seen it. So we have to do the best we can and give rise to the bodhicitta. Well, how do you do it? Every day. That's how you do it. Every single day. When you wake up in the morning, think, what can I do to benefit sentient beings today? And how am I going to fit in my caring for others in my busy time? Some people have all kinds of time and they still don't do it. So the bodhicitta is absolutely necessary. Are you understanding bodhicitta a little bit better now? Does it help? Yeah, good. Some of us are inclined towards scholastic studies, scholastic ability. And that's simply the karma of the situation. They have done it many times in the past, and they continue on that road. And many people who have, as I said, practiced and learned bodhicitta in their lifetimes will continue with that. That will be their habit, and they will be reborn with that. But it really depends which direction you aim yourself in. If you want to be a scholar, go ahead and do that, but don't forget the bodhicitta. That's where you go wrong. Don't forget the bodhicitta. And if you can only think about yourself and your own well-being, well, don't do that. Don't forget the bodhicitta. If you are alarmed at how sad and alone you are, forget that. Rely on the bodhicitta. I hope my students in Sedona are listening. Are they? Don't know? Are we on? Well, let's find out. Because I'm talking to somebody in particular. We'll let them figure it out. So, some of us worry that we haven't had any scholastic training, even though we've tried. I mean, Dharma is so vast. Vajrayana is so profound and deep and so vast that we could hardly understand. We'll never understand it in one lifetime. So you have to rely on the bodhicitta. And not just ordinary human kindness. You have to care for others by praying for them, by dedicating your merit, by gaining merit and again dedicating it. That's what you have to do continually. That's the great bodhicitta. That's the activity that brings about enlightenment. But again, if you are inclined towards scholastic studies, do it because it's necessary to teach others. But if you don't practice yourself, the bodhicitta, there will not be such good result for those who have taught. You have to be able to pass on the bodhicitta to others. And that's what makes it special. That's what makes it Vajrayana so profound, because we do that. So let's see, what else was I going to talk about besides bodhicitta? I think I've covered the subject. No, I haven't. I know there's more. I guess what I'd like to do is impress upon you how important this is, and how not to get lost in just stuff. To practice bodhicitta today and always. To give rise to the great love, the great bodhicitta, so that you can achieve realization. Nothing will harm you if you truly have bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the strongest thing in all of samsaric reality. The only thing you can find in samsaric reality that is important is the bodhicitta. So remember that. If you wonder, do you need some water? If you remember that, then it will never be different for you. You will always, please don't do that during a teaching. You will always be aware of how to continue and how to go forward. But if you drop the bodhicitta and you are, say, a nun or a monk for any other reason, you'll fail. You may still wear the robes, but you'll fail. And you'll know by how disengaged you become. Some of you I know suffer more because you think about yourselves all the time than for any other reason. How horrible to be locked in a hell where all you think about is your own discomfort and your own problems. How much more rich and beautiful a life if you think of others, not only think of them, but care for them, practice for them, do for them. Part of what we do here is make sandwiches for the homeless. Big deal. It's not bodhicitta. It's kindness. And it's because you know they're hungry. And so you give to them. There's a piece of bodhicitta in there, a piece that says, I hope you'll forgive me for my forgetfulness. I am taking some medicine that makes me forgetful. And it's a little bit of a problem. But I'm trying. And I'm trying because of bodhicitta. I'm so sorry I stayed away so long. But I was trying to recover. And I've done a good job. I'm better now. But I have to come back, even if I can't remember yet, because I love you so much. And because of the bodhicitta requires it. I'll do my best, and I always will. But it's more important for me to come back than to remember every single thing, isn't it? So I'm here. She's the reminder. That's why she sits over there. So she's supposed to whisper. But it doesn't matter because I'm saying the question right out loud. Anyway, let's get back on track again. I'll teach regularly. You'll forgive me for anything that I do wrong in terms of teaching. Forgetting it, for instance. So please forgive me. I'm not perfect, but I'm here. But you're not perfect either, so I'm not worried about it. So here we have discussed the great bodhicitta, and we understand that in order to understand bodhicitta, you must realize the suffering of all sentient beings, and that means you have to meditate on it. Not your own, which is what you do every day. Naturally, we meditate on our own suffering. How enlightening. But instead, we should meditate on the suffering of sentient beings so we'll feel in our hearts the need to take care of them. Not just one person, not just 3 people, not just a family, not just a community, but all sentient beings in all worlds. And that's what it takes to really get going on the path of Dharma. And if you've lost it, you've probably lost the bodhicitta. You went off into ordinary, which is I care only about me and my best friend. Don't do that. Nothing in your relationship or your marriage or your friendship or anything will go well if you don't accomplish the bodhicitta, or don't consider the bodhicitta every day, because it's only self-oriented and it will slip away. It's nothing. So I'm advising you to give rise to the bodhicitta in order to make even ordinary relationships hold together. It's not important to think so much about yourself, but more important to think about all sentient beings and the suffering that they experience. If you go on and consider only your own suffering and forget about sentient beings, you just go round and around in a circle. You know that. It never ends. But if you give rise to that caring for sentient beings by giving rise to citta, then you're back in Dharma. You're back in business, I say. So when's that going to happen? Anytime you decide, just start. You don't need anything to start giving rise to the bodhicitta. Just my few paltry words to remind you. Now you have what you need to give rise to the bodhicitta. And it's up to you, up to me to remind you, and it's up to you to actually do it. You know, in the beginning of every practice, there's the refuge and bodhicitta verses. You know what I'm talking about. So in that, you can see that in every practice we do remind ourselves, if we recognize what that is, that we care about the liberation and suffering of all sentient beings, and that's why we're doing this practice. You see that in the practices. But do we see that in conduct? Not really. If you lose your way on the path, it's because you practiced for a different reason, not for the bodhicitta. And losing your way on the path means just not coming around and not practicing anymore. You're not asking anyone to remind you, and you're not listening. So you stop coming. And you concern yourself with ordinary things, only ordinary things, and you lose your way. Bodhicitta is not ordinary. Kindness is considered ordinary. But bodhicitta is not ordinary. Again, it arises straight from the primordial nature and can be passed on from life to life. And how do you do that? By caring for sentient beings more than you care about yourself, and not just making sandwiches. Practice, practice, practice. Dedicate everything. Everything you do, whether it's from taking out the garbage to recitation of mantra, to the liberation of salvation and salvation of all sentient beings. A lot of people go around the stupa and say some mantra to try to solve a problem. It works, but it's their problem. It has nothing to do with sentient beings, other sentient beings. So when you go to the stupa and you pray and you want and you need, remember that throughout samsara, there are so many sentient beings that are wanting and needing so much more than you are. So remember that that's why we have the stupas, that's why we have the practices, that's why we have the teachings. This is why I'm reminding you. It's all the bodhicitta. Do we connect? Are we getting there? Okay. This is what I want you to take away with you. This idea of bodhicitta, and may it never be separate from you again. Never. May it always be part of your heart. May you never forget. None of you. If you drop your robe, it's because you've forgotten sentient beings. You're kind, you're nice, but you don't have the bodhicitta. And I'm saying this to the people who have robes who are not in this room, too. Are there any? So that's all I'm going to say for tonight. I wanted you to take this away step by step, inch by inch. Remember the suffering of sentient beings. Do not allow yourself to become content with that. Never forget. And use all of your merit and offer it all of your merit to benefit them for the sake of sentient beings. This is what we do. So the best thing is to have both scholarship and bodhicitta. But if you have a choice, go for the bodhicitta every time. Every time. Okay, so that's it for tonight. Well, thank you.
going on and on and on. And I just realized that what could I say? That the mic wasn't open for you. I'll just back up here and just say thank you so much for joining us, because it's been a while, and I suspect that the 2 people that are left are 2 people that have been here before. Join us when you can at the temple, and also when you can online. You can go to tara.org, go to the page that under Meditate, Pray, Study that says calendar, and it will tell you any event that we have going on. You click on the event and it will give you the information. So that would be really good, and you can join in that way. So please, we'll see you next time. It's teaching by Jetsunma will be on Wednesday night at 7:30, and we hope you can join us then. Thank you so very much.